Everybody, welcome to our webinar today, Air Source Heat Pumps, High Efficiency Heating and Cooling. I'm Joe Wachunas, here as always with my teammate, Brian Stewart. So excited to have you today. This is a webinar that's being brought to you by, of course, Electrify Now, an all-volunteer organization that believes electrification is the clearest path to decarbonization, and the San Diego Learn program, which is a San Diego-based workforce education and training program that has partnered with Electrify Now to offer free energy efficiency and electrification webinars. Please visit the Learn website for more information, www.sandiegolearn.com. We'll introduce our panelists in just a second, but great to have you with us. So this webinar is part of our Go Electric series, talking about the benefits of electrification for homeowners. These, of course, include lower energy bills in most places, cleaner indoor air, lower air pollution outside, and of course, a real strong decrease in carbon pollution, more comfort, and increased safety. We'll be doing webinars across the year, throughout the year, on key electrification topics. And today's topic is on heat pumps, and specifically on heat pumps to heat and cool your home. Heat pumps might be a new word to you, but heat pumps have been around for decades, and they are in all of our houses. Your fridge is a heat pump. It basically means it's a device that moves heat rather than creates it, and that's why it's so efficient. And it works well in all types of climates. Think your refrigerator works well on hot days, keeping your food cold and creating ice. So today we're going to dive into the heat pumps that heat and cool your home. It's also called an air source heat pump. And we're going to talk about different types of air source heat pumps. And they all have one thing in common, which is they have this outdoor unit, which is a box-like structure that with a fan that blows air across coils. And that transfers heat into refrigerant, and then that refrigerant is circulated into your home. We'll get into the weeds on that, but the heat pumps are measured in their coefficient of performance, that COP acronym you see, and that's usually 2 to 3, which means for every unit of energy you put in, you get 2 to 3 units of heat out of that. And heat pumps they're the most efficient heating and cooling equipment out there. So there's a couple different types of heat pumps that we'll talk about today. The first type might be very familiar to you, ducted or central heat pumps. These look like your standard outdoor air conditioner, except they provide heat as well to your home. They also have that air handler within your home, and that might be familiar to you if you have a furnace. This is a great replacement for your central furnace, and the difference is that they can provide heating and cooling, and you don't need that furnace in a lot of cases. Brian, give us a quick word on the filtration of these central heat pumps.
Well, with any kind of central system, you're going to have some kind of air filter. And I think it's just important to realize how much difference there is between a cheap 1-inch filter and a 4-inch filter. A 4-inch filter is going to give you much better filtration and not decrease the amount of airflow that's going through your system. And a good 4-inch filter is going to do everything you need in terms of keeping your air clean, even during wildfire season, which is more and more of a concern here on the West Coast in particular. But you can also get HEPA filters if you're really concerned about your air quality, which will really, really, really do a good job of air filtration. But it's just a thing to keep in mind when you're talking about a system. If you're installing one, make sure you at least get a 4-inch filter. You'll be really happy you did.
Great. Okay, and then the other main type of heat pump we'll talk about today are ductless heat pumps or mini splits. These are the heat pumps that I have in my house. You still have that same outdoor unit. You can see that located outside, but instead of ducts running through your house, you have these indoor units or heads that transfer that refrigerant and blow hot air or cool air into a room. They provide that heating and air conditioning. They save on having ducts. They work great in homes that have electric baseboard heat to replace that electric baseboard and heat and cool much more efficiently. Or for those rooms that don't have good access to the central heating and cooling. Think of that upstairs unit that always stays warmer or cooler than you'd like. They do have less air filtration than your ducted units. So a lot of times we recommend getting a separate air filter if you have ductless heat pumps. But they have higher heating and cooling efficiency there because they don't lose that heat and through your duct work. And then we just wanted to say that there's heat pumps for every climate. Heat pumps really got started in the US, especially in the South and Southeast, and cooling dominated areas. So there's a heat pump for every climate. So whether you live below that dotted line and you're in a cooling dominated area, or above it in a heating dominated area, there is a heat pump for you. And today we'll talk a little bit about all these different types of heat pumps.
Great. So next we're going to go over just some general information, and this is average data. So you have to keep in mind that everything is going to be a little different depending on where you live. This information is dependent on the relative cost of gas versus electricity in your area. But on a national basis, and the calculations that I've done for almost every place in the United States, you will see savings by going to a heat pump, particularly if you've got an oil furnace, like some older, not so much on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, this is still a pretty significant number of homes that have oil furnaces. You get massive savings by going to a heat pump. Electric baseboard heating everywhere in the country, you're going to get a huge savings by either augmenting that system with a heat pump or getting rid of it completely and transferring to those ductless systems like Joe was just talking about. But gas furnaces, more and more heat pumps are competitive with gas furnaces in terms of cost. Most places in the United States, you will save some modest amount of money by switching from gas to a heat pump. I would say in California is the one place where you're not going to see a huge savings by going to a heat pump for heating because of the relative cost of gas and electricity prices there. But what is true everywhere in the country, regardless of where you live, regardless of the electric grid that you're using, you're going to see a massive reduction in carbon emissions by going from any of these systems to a heat pump. And the reason is because these systems are so efficient. That coefficient of performance that we were just talking about earlier, 2 or 3 units of heat for every unit of energy you use. None of these other systems have efficiencies anywhere close to that. That means they take more energy in order to deliver the heat you need for your home, which then creates carbon emissions. So with the grid as it is today, without what's happening in the background, which a lot of you will know about, which is that our grid is getting cleaner all the time. As it is today, you're going to cut your carbon emissions at least in half by going to a heat pump. And as the grid gets cleaner, it's going to go towards zero. In many states, there's laws that require this to happen within the lifetime of a new heat pump, or you can sign up for clean energy in a lot of easy ways. We'll talk about that probably other webinars. But you can get clean energy in your home right now today, in which case your heat pump would be creating zero carbon emissions. So it's very exciting technology, which is why most of the legislation and the policy efforts are going towards moving heat in this direction because of the climate benefits. All right, this is going to get a little bit geeky, so bear with us here. I'll try to keep it simple, but the importance of this next slide is just to give you a little bit of an understanding about why it's important to ask really good questions to your contractor about what you're getting if you think you want to get a heat pump. And what this graph shows is in a really simple way. Every home is going to be slightly different, but as the temperature, over here at 65 degrees, your home needs very little energy in order to keep it warm. But as it gets colder, let's say down to minus 15, your home's going to need a lot of heat in order to keep it warm, and in some cases maybe a lot more than what we're showing here. But the point is that as it gets colder, your home needs more heat to keep it a comfortable temperature. A really basic, low-cost, single-stage heat pump has a fixed capacity. It will produce less heat as the temperature gets lower. That's because its efficiency just decreases, which is fine in most cases. But what this means is that at some point, this kind of heat pump is going to not provide enough heat to keep your home an adequately warm temperature. So you're going to need some kind of backup heat system as it gets lower than that. In this case, we're showing 27 degrees. It's going to vary by your home, by your system, et cetera. And you should be getting a view like this for your home. If you're serious about getting a heat pump, your contractor should be able to give you some kind of picture like this. But what this means is when you're in the backup heat scenario, you either need a gas furnace or electric resistance heat strips that can be put in an air handler, for example, to give you the additional heat that you're requiring. That tends to be expensive. You would like to avoid the situation in most cases. So that means you want to push this crossover temperature to as low as possible, which means more efficient equipment, typically means more expensive equipment. that will cost more upfront, but can be really worth it in the long term to save you money on heating expenses. This is an example of a more like a cold climate heat pump, and there will be versions in between these two lines for sure, depending on the equipment. But a really efficient cold climate heat pump will maintain its capacity down to really low temperatures like -5 or even below. And for many homes, that means that you're going to be providing enough heat with this system to not need any backup heat, except for in these very extreme cold temperatures, which in California, for example, you're never going to see this. Most places in the United States, you're not going to see this. But I will point out that these units are being used in very cold places like Vermont and Maine, where the system can be tuned, if it's the right one, to provide all the heat you need, even when it gets very cold. So the point of this graph is just to familiarize yourself a little bit with a conversation that's good to have with your contractor if you're thinking about this, to make sure you're getting equipment that's reasonably priced, but also provides you with enough heat to avoid backup heating as much as possible. Okay, so that's a quick overview, just a summary. You know, what you get with a heat pump is increased comfort year-round because you're getting heating and cooling. You typically, particularly with the ducted systems, a central system, you get more air filtration, but in both cases, you're getting more air circulation, which translates to higher comfort, more consistent temperatures in general. And people report higher comfort with heat pumps pretty across the board. Another nice thing to know about heat pumps is they increase the value of your home. This is a study from the University of Maryland, which said that a heat pump can add $10 to $17,000 to the value of a home in the United States. So you're buying something that people recognize has quality and value. And for all these reasons that we've talked about, lower operating expenses, increasing the value of your home, more comfort, more cleaner air, et cetera, reduced carbon emissions, all these benefits, people are hearing about this, the word's getting out, and sales of heat pumps are dramatically increasing. What this is showing is that in 2018, gas furnaces outsold heat pumps by 54 to 46%. And that has completely switched by 2023. And this trend is continuing. Gas furnace sales continue to go down, and heat pump sales are rising as the word gets out that this technology is really amazing. So the point is, don't feel like you're the only one doing this. A lot of people recognize the benefits of these systems. All right, let's talk quickly about some incentives. There are federal tax credits that are fantastic as part of the Biden administration's IRA tax bill. So you can save about 30% of the cost, up to a cap of $2,000 for putting in a heat pump system from the feds. There are rebates coming for income qualified residents and homeowners that will come out probably later this year. Depends on where you live. Some states will be faster than others, but there are income qualifications for this, but the rebates are really nice for people who are in more moderate income ranges. And then every state's different in terms of the rebates that are available. And utilities often offer programs as well, incentives. If you live in California or in Washington State, I highly recommend this site called switcheson.org. You can log on and put in some information about where you live, et cetera. It will give you all the incentives that are available for you today for any kind of equipment from heat pumps to water heaters, et cetera. Here in Oregon, there's another website called Electrify Oregon that gives you that similar information. Highly recommend that. We'll send information out to anybody who wants about how to get that. There's information on our website that's can be really helpful if you're interested to learn more about this, including this sheet here about questions to ask your contractor to make sure you're getting the right equipment. All right, so speaking about talking to contractors and asking questions to contractors, we're really excited to have two fantastic panelists with us today to answer some questions for us about these exact things. And those two panelists are Craig Ocker, who's the operations manager at Greensavers. Greensavers is a dedicated home performance contractor taking a systems approach to home improvements, which we'll talk about later. That's a really important thing to keep in mind, thinking about the whole house, not just the heat source you're putting in. But Greensavers have pioneered electrification work in Oregon, and they've won the Energy Star Home Performance Contractor of the Year for many years in a row here, certified B Corporation. We love working with Greensavers because they really are aligned with a lot of our goals about making sure people are comfortable, they're getting the right products, they're going to save money, and we're doing the right thing for the environment. We're also joined by Myra Munoz. She's a home performance consultant for Greensavers. She's been working in this space for over 6 years. And she's the person that you might be seeing if you were talking to green savers that come to your home. It would be trying to figure out what's the right system for you. You'd be asking her questions and she'd be answering to make sure that you get the right equipment. So I'm really excited to have both of these panelists with us today. Welcome, Craig and Myra. And yeah, let's jump into it.
Yeah, I think to start us off for this discussion, level set with folks. How do folks get started when they want to convert to a heat pump? What are the first steps? How should folks start looking into this? Why don't we start with you, Craig?
Okay, hey everybody. So I think the most important first step is like I think we've talked about this a little bit, but like there's two reasons why people start looking for new heating systems. Either they're doing it proactively because they want to electrify, or they're ready to make this switch, or they want to figure out how they can be more efficient or lower their carbon footprint. I mean, the other reason is that your system breaks. Whatever you're using currently to heat or cool doesn't work anymore. I mean, so the best place to begin in either case is to find yourself a HVAC contractor who can come out to your house, get eyes on the situation, look at your home, and start to design a system that's going to be the best, the best solution for you. And obviously that case where you're doing this proactively and not when your system is broken, that's a way more comfortable space to be in when you're doing this, because obviously you can take the time, ask the right questions, and figure something out, on your own timeline, rather than like it's Thanksgiving and you're freezing and you just need something, so.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's something that we talk about a lot with people, that the last time you want to be thinking about this is when your system is broken. It's best if you've got an aging system. And Craig or Myra, I mean, what do you think in terms of, let's say you're living in a home with a gas furnace, and how old is that furnace before you should start thinking about maybe taking a proactive step?
I would say year 15 is a good time to do that. Some furnaces can fail sooner than that if they were poorly installed. But around 15 years into a furnace lifespan is a really good time to come up with a game plan.
Yeah. Right. And I would agree with Myra that that's like when it becomes pretty emphatic. Like if you have a 15-year-old furnace, you should be shopping right now. That's just a good idea. In terms of if you're motivated though, or if your system it breaks, right? I would, that date gets pulled back for me kind of every year, right? Like it just, at this point, I'm kind of feeling like, if you're still burning natural gas to heat your home right now, and then if your system's more than even, I don't know, like 5 or 7 years old, even, like a lot of these systems have 10-year warranties, right? Like that's one other thing you can think about. And some of them have 7-year warranties or 8-year warranties. It's
Right.
like, if that system is on the precipice of being out of warranty, if it's inefficient, if it's an 80% efficient gas furnace, you should just get after it, probably, and so our recommendations on this will be different, tailored to different people, like and there's an emotional component, like did you buy that gas furnace 5 years ago? Because if you did, then you feel like you are invested in it. But if you bought a house that had that thing, I'm going to be like, you should get rid of this, probably, like we don't like to throw things in landfills that work, unless they're doing ongoing.
Yeah.
Or one way.
You can recycle. You can recycle all that metal. It's a great place. Great thing to do.
Exactly. So I think at 15 years, you should be shopping, and then before that, there are lots of stages at which, depending on your motivation, your position, and whatever, you should be planning. And certainly, I guess the one other trigger real quick is if you don't have cooling right now, and that's a thing you want to add, that's another time where we think that should trigger you thinking about yoinking your furnace out of there, right? Because if you're going to buy a piece of outdoor equipment and an indoor coil already, maybe you should just think about getting rid of that entire natural gas system and just upgrade to a heat pump, so you get your high efficiency cooling right now, which is the thing you need, but you also have future proofed yourself against having a gas furnace, and you don't get yourself in this cycle where it's like, oh, now I have a new air conditioner, and then when my furnace dies in 5 years, well, I feel like I should get another furnace because I just have this new air conditioner. Like, just get it all out of there.
Hey, Craig, just on that topic, I mean, I sometimes get the question about the difference between, from an efficiency standpoint, cooling now, between an air conditioner and a heat pump. Is there a big difference there? I mean, I guess there can be depending on how efficient an air conditioner you get. But in general, do you save money cooling wise with a heat pump versus an air conditioner?
Almost uniformly, and I'd like to defer to Myra here. I mean, in the instances where you get called out to someone's house and they've got a pile of bids from other contractors, how efficient are those air conditioners that most of them are recommending compared to the heat pump you are recommending?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at probably 14 SEER ACs being recommended versus, 18 SEER heat pump systems.
Right. And SEER, by the way, is just the acronym for the performance metric associated with cooling, and the higher the number, the more efficient it is, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
And I would say on average, if you look at if you call an HVAC contractor and you say, hey, I want air conditioner added to my furnace, they'll come out and give you a bid for that. And if you look at the average like efficiency of that versus what we would recommend, what you get automatically if you just get yourself a heat pump, I would say that you are going to be saving something like 25 to 30% on your energy bills for cooling.
Okay, good.
Something like that. And
Well,
I
great.
and you're right, you can buy really expensive air conditioners for a whole lot of money, but at that point, you should
You
just
might as well get a heat pump. Yeah,
spend the money. Like, buy a heat pump.
gotcha.
And I guess on that note with the contractors, when you give them a call, Myra, maybe talk us through what folks who are shopping for a heat pump want to keep in mind when you have a contractor visiting. What do you want to make sure your contractor does when they come out?
Absolutely. Yeah. I, especially as we've received more, outlier days with our climate and extreme weather in this particular region, I think finding a contractor that is very aware of what is going on in your house. How is the attic insulated? Did somebody air seal it? Do you have new windows? Is there actually insulation in your walls? I think probably a lot of HVAC contractors can walk into a house, make some various assessments on some of those items, but a lot of people don't even bother to find out, is there insulation in this 1920s house? And all of those things greatly affect a heat load calculation and what capacity you wind up needing. So making sure that you're working with a contractor that fits with your what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to fully electrify your house and not rely on a gas furnace as your backup heat, but also how much heat does your house need and what temperature are you hedging against as the lowest temperature?
Yeah, I think that load calculation I like to tell people, look, you don't really need to understand it, but if they can't show it to you, it means they didn't do it. So, and that means that you don't know necessarily whether you're getting the right system. That's how I simply think of it. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah. It makes sense. I say that all the time. It's like, I can cook the books and I can fudge a heat load count to make it say kind of whatever I want. Like, it's not an exact science, but it is a great snapshot. It does help us a lot with the basic snapshot. That thing that Myra said, if you have a 2-story 1920s house, whether it has wall insulation or not is going to make a difference of maybe like a factor of 2 in what size system we need for that place, right? And so, yeah, your kind of thing, if a contractor just did a load calc, if they poke their head in your attic, they have separated themselves from the vast majority of the competition. And so, yeah, asking for that thing is a good filter for, do I have a good contractor? Or is this somebody who's just like out in the street with their thumb and being like, yeah, that's about a 3-ton.
Yeah.
What about ducting? Do contractors need to be taking into account your existing ducting, and how does that factor into their bid?
Ducting is important. If a duct system is more restrictive, that is going to create more resistance on airflow in a system. Sizing a return register properly. A lot of these heat pump systems are continually moving air, so you might need to enlarge your return. Sometimes people need to enlarge their ducts, which could be another time where you ask your contractor, hey, what about ductless? Is that a good fit for me?
I hear that a lot in older homes. That maybe there's a good transition to the kind of ducted, ductless thing, but a lot of older homes, I know we had this problem in our house. The ducts for the downstairs were fine, but the ducts that went upstairs are so small that that means that the rooms up there are cold in the winter and they're hot in the summer because we don't get as much airflow up there. And I think that's pretty common in older homes, but that's where these kind of combination systems can be interesting. Yeah.
I would say probably 65 to 75% of the heat pump systems we're installing in the Portland area are mixed ducted and ductless systems. Classically, the half story is that exact same scenario where airflow is not getting up to that second level. During heating season, it can be less of a problem because heat rises through the envelope of the house, versus in cooling season, you need more cold air up there. All the heat's rising, the airflow is poor, and the sun is baking that second level. So a ductless solution for a half story or a second level, that is a really great way to control that area of the home.
Yeah, and just to like round that out, like the way that Green Savers became positioned as this like electrification contractor is not because we invented the term back in 2015 or something. That was really about comfort. It was this idea that trying to put single zone air conditioners in multi-story houses was just not resulting in summertime comfort for our clients. They like that upstairs is always going to be more hot. And so what heat pumps, what these high efficiency heat pumps that we install do for us is they give us the flexibility to put multiple zones on one outdoor unit. So we can kind of create these elegant solutions that ensure comfort. And for us in the beginning, that the high efficiency and the electrification and all these other things were kind of secondary benefits to doing what is best for your house and comfort. And I guess that's like a worthwhile thing to say, because I think a lot of people tend to have this idea that like, oh, I got to suck it up and take a comfort hit or something to go electrify my house or to get off gas or something. And the truth is, it's the exact opposite. A heat pump, a well-designed heat pump system is going to actually keep you more comfortable than any other system we could possibly invent. And it's why we're there.
That's great. Hey, can we talk about homes with baseboard heating for a minute? I mean, because it depends, region to region is different, but there's still a lot of homes that have baseboard heating. And what's your experience with how to deal with that situation?
Got Myra.
Depends on the layout, I would say. A more compact footprint. If somebody's looking for a lower cost investment and to greatly offset their electricity usage, sometimes just installing a single wall-mounted ductless unit that can handle the main living area. If it's a, more compact 800 square foot apartment, right? If it's a larger footprint and there's a good crawl space or attic, you can also run a duct system and do a central system. So it really kind of depends on what the client is trying to accomplish.
Right. And I guess air conditioning is obviously going to be a huge motivation in those situations probably too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I would say a lot of people come into the heat pump conversation with the short-term goal of adding cooling this season.
Yeah.
Oh, right. And I think, for us, that decision about ducts, like, I think my dream would be to do more ductless systems, probably, like where they are more efficient. You don't have to cut in duct systems. We're putting fewer holes in the envelope of the house. So there's a bunch of things we like about that. But if your house has 4 bedrooms and a kitchen, dining, family, like we're talking about putting 5 heads in this house then to get you to the point where every room has heating and cooling in it. And that starts to become like, we end up in a cost prohibitive situation. So a lot of times we will put a wall mounted head to do the main living area, and then we'll put a small ducted unit up in the attic and drop a line into 3 bedrooms or something, because that ends up being just less expensive. In my dream world, we would just we would just scrap every duct system probably, and that's outside the building envelope for sure. But we just don't have the opportunity to do that all the time. So,
well, talk to us about how folks at various stages of their journey should get their home heat pump ready. So maybe you've got that gas furnace you're not ready to replace, but you're thinking in a couple of years, or your furnace is old. What are some of the steps that folks who are thinking about heat pumps should take to start getting their homes ready?
Yeah, weatherization. Get a broad overlook of what is going on in your home. Get somebody that can come and assess everything. Insulation is really important. Air sealing. If you air seal an attic flat, it's going to make the whole insulation assembly 40% more effective for the Department of Energy. So air sealing, insulation, all of these things are boxes that you can check off year by year as you march closer towards the end of your furnace's lifetime.
So then you're not necessarily paying for it all up front, the insulation and the heat pump at once, but you can kind of space it out over time.
Yeah, exactly. Start the heat pump conversation early. That way you know what needs to happen in the house to really get you heat pump ready. Because these heat pumps are delivering continual output at a more soft rate. They're really truly designed to hold your home's temperature. So holding air and heat and energy inside your house is important when we get into really extreme cold weather. In milder temperatures, you might never notice the difference, but in really cold weather, it's important.
Just on that point, really quickly, because I think some of our audience, if you're living in California, this may not be that relevant for you, but in many places where the temperatures get cold, there's this myth that heat pumps won't work in those situations. Can you just talk to that a little bit, and with your experience with installing heat pumps in some cold areas here in Oregon?
Yeah, sure. I can chime in. Yeah. So I think you spoke about it a little bit earlier, but there's like basically three, I would say, main classes of heat pumps, like kind of old school unitary heat pumps, like which you call single stage, in your graph there. And those are definitely not designed to keep people's houses warm when it's cold. They're there to augment in mild conditions, and then you're relying on some kind of backup. We do these inverter driven high efficiency heat pumps that are not cold climate capable. And even in the Portland area, like in the Willamette Valley, where we have relatively mild conditions, we do not recommend those as standalone heating sources for people's homes. If somebody calls us for a heat pump system, we do recommend going with what Mitsubishi calls their hyperheat. Various brands have different things, but they're like extended capacity, which basically these heat pumps are capable of delivering their full capacity down to 5 degrees. And in the Portland metro area, we do not install backup heat. We do not. We install those hyperheat systems, and we very rarely have people who have any issues. Like when it dropped down to 15 degrees, which is 9 degrees below my design temperature in Portland, right? When we design systems, like we variously are discussing all the time about how extreme to design for. But if you design for too cold of a system, you're going to be oversizing everybody's equipment. So we design for that 24-degree temperature, which is rare. Like that's a pretty. It's rare that it gets below that in Portland, but this year it dropped down to 15. And even in those conditions, we did have a handful of people whose houses couldn't keep up, who, like where their temperature inside dropped below 70 degrees and they were not happy about it. But I'm talking about a relatively small handful. And so I feel confident going forward that we are going to continue to install hyperheat systems without backup in the Willamette Valley and with no concern whatsoever. In Bend, where temperatures do drop below zero, reliably every year, in our Central Oregon market, we do put backup heating systems on people's homes. If they don't have some kind of if they have a wood burning fireplace that kicks out a lot of BT, or like an actual wood stove that kicks out BTUs, or they have a gas insert or something that they love that they want to keep, we might skip a backup on those, but to just ensure that people are safe when it gets real cold. In Central Oregon, in those markets where it drops down into single digits, I think having some kind of backup is something we believe is a worthwhile thing. And our hope is that you never use it, or it kicks on for 10 total hours all year or something. It's like a thing, but it's there as a safety measure to make sure you've got something when it's extremely cold and you don't want to, because when cold like that gets risky, you just have to gotta take care of people.
That's great.
So maybe we got a couple of minutes left here, but because we're getting a little over time here, but I would love to hear your thoughts about financing. Because there's a lot you see 0% financing thrown out from vendors, sometimes in contractors. And what's your take on financing?
should definitely ask questions. We were talking about this earlier. There's a lot of loan products out there that appear to have a good deal, 0% for however many months. And oftentimes there is a fee buried within that is, part of the loan fee. Contractors are not required to disclose it. So having a conversation, what kind of financing is offered. For example, Mitsubishi, they partner with Synchrony Financing. But because we are a certified Mitsubishi dealer, the highest tier, we're getting a buy down on that loan fee. So when we're doing 0% for 18 months, it's actually 0% for 18 months. Other contractors might be burying a fee. So it's always worthwhile to ask questions. How is this financing product set up?
So that bearing the fee is the fees included in kind of the whole system price, and people might not know about it.
Correct. Yes.
Perfect. You might see from a lot of contractors, they'll be like, this is the price of your furnace, and here's the options of how you can pay for it. Or we have a cash discount. And that idea of a cash discount is really like, oh, we actually put a 10% fee into the price of this thing. But if you want to just pay us, want to pay cash, well, we can give you a discount for that. And that's because we don't have to pay this loan fee. I think because as you can imagine, if you're a contractor going out to the market and you are hiding a loan fee in your price, the first price you show somebody's got to include it. You can't be like, oh, this thing's 15 grand. And they're like, great, I'd love to take advantage of the financing. You'll be like, sweet, that's $16,500. Like, you're not doing that. So you're probably coming out at 16.5 and then you're offering discounts to get down cash. It's just important to ask questions. Like, they're not going to disclose it. A good contractor will tell you exactly what's going on if you ask, and you should know. Sometimes it's still a good deal to pay the fee and get the 0% financing. I mean, Myra has done that for clients and it has worked out. So, and then I think it's also just important that there are these financing options that people can bring because they're whatever part of the equipment manufacturer that they sell has a deal like we do with Synchrony. But there's also other options, right? So like Puget Sound Energy in the Pacific Northwest here, they have a home energy efficiency lending program. You can go there and take out a loan for a heat pump. The nice thing about that is that you can get longer terms of like 10 or 15 years, which means that your monthly payment is something that's affordable for somebody who doesn't have like a ton of money laying around. I mean, 18 months is great, but on a $20,000 system, that's still over $1,000 a month, And so that adds a lot of money for a lot of people, and that might not make it that much more affordable for you. But if you can string that out to 7 years or 10 or 8, 15 or something, that helps out a lot better. And so it's worth it to ask about other options. And then, again, in the Portland area or in Oregon, we have a nonprofit lending institution in Craft 3 that partners with the Energy Trust of Oregon. And so and anybody has access to that. So you can get like a pretty good interest rate on a long-term loan to help you afford it. So there's other options out there more, your contractor might have a good deal. And if they do, that's rad. Get the details, make sure you like it and go for it. But if they don't, shop around because somebody else might.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this conversation is a great one to have with your contractor. And it is another way of getting a sense of whether you're working with someone who really knows, as a good contractor, knows what they're doing. Because if they are transparent, if they can answer your questions, if they can talk to you about local options for financing, that just means they're more qualified to help you with your project. So I encourage people to ask questions about that. That's great. Joe, any other wrap-up thoughts here?
Not quite a wrap-up thought, but there was one interesting question I just wanted to field quickly in a minute or two, Greg and Myra. If there are changes happening in the refrigerant world, we're going to lower GWP refrigerants that trap less heat. How does that affect heat pumps? Should folks wait to get a heat pump as these refrigerants transition? What do you say to folks that might ask about your refrigerants?
My understanding of it is a slow rollout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would say people are not going to benefit. The experience of you owning a heat pump at your house is not going to change materially when you have, when we're doing R410A, which is what we use now, and we're going to be moving to R454B here next year. You are not going to experience any difference in your life. These new refrigerants are not substantially more efficient or something, they do have lower global warming potential. So what that means is if they leak out into atmosphere, which they should never ever do. But if they do, they're going to have a lower impact on the earth. That is the only difference here. So I would say that if you're just in the early tire kicker stage and you like the idea of a low global warming potential, like sure, wait until 2025, get a heat pump that's got the new refrigerant. Cool. But if you need a heat pump right now, get one. Your life isn't going to be that different.
Yeah.
R410, like we still can get R22, which was phased out more than a decade ago or something, so like it's not like nobody will be able to service this thing or nobody's going to have the tools or something. Like we all have the tools, we all have R410. We'll be able, like you're not signing up for something that's going to be obsolete. So I wouldn't worry about it that much.
That's an important, yeah.
I'm glad we're moving that way, but it's not like your life is going to be better if you wait.
That's an important point, right? We did a refrigerants webinar, and the R410A will still be around for many years to service the equipment that uses that. That's an important point to drive home. Great. Well, thanks for answering that. Yeah, we are, I think we are at time. Brian, so you might have one.
No, I think we're good. I think we should wrap here. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to Craig and Myra for your help today. That was really, we could talk for a long time about this stuff and go geek out for a long time. And I'm sure some of you out there might have questions that we didn't answer today. If you do, email Joe or I. We're happy to get your question answered. But I think we covered the basics here in a really good way. So I appreciate your time, both of you. And to all of our audience, thanks for tuning in, and good luck with your electrification projects. And let us know if there's any way we can help make it easier for you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.